Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is October 8th. Today in botanical history, we celebrate an American civil servant and poet, an American art expert, and a Harlem artist and gardener. We'll hear an excerpt from the historical fiction writer Deanna Rayburn, and we grow that garden library today with a lyrical book by a peach farmer. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of a humorist who made a living writing about the sunny side of life. Well, before we get to all of that, it's worth noting that on this day, back in 1820, Mary Wordsworth went to see the Palace of Versailles. She was going to visit the gardens. And so just reading that is a reminder, hopefully, to all of us that fall is a wonderful time to go and visit gardens. So if you haven't been to a botanical garden near you in the fall, or if you haven't gone on a fall garden tour, there's something for your bucket list. So keep that in mind. Now, speaking of gardens, I want to wish a happy 20th anniversary to Omaha's botanical garden. It's called Lauritzen Gardens, and their story is very special. This garden was built on top of a landfill, although you'd never know it today. Now, in the Facebook group for the show, I did just add a video that tells the story of this garden. So go ahead and check that out if you get a chance. Great little story and a beautiful, relaxing video of this wonderful garden. You get a little tour of it. All right. Now, in addition to all of that, I need to give two quick shout outs to listeners of the show. The first is to Danny Perkins in North Carolina. He sent me some honey. He not only sent it once, he sent it twice, because the first time he sent it, for whatever reason, the package ended up getting returned to him. And so he was kind enough to resend it to me. But he sent me some honey from a local farm. They're called Be Kind Family Farm. And so I got the wildflower pure raw honey, just a cute little bottle of it from Danny. And he attached this adorable note that had a picture of a butterfly on one of his echinacea. And Danny wrote, "Hi, Jennifer, here is the honey that I spoke of." We talked on the phone. And he wrote, "The farmer is only a mile or two from my place, so I expect that a little bit of my garden is in this. Take care and hugs to Max, Danny." Well, isn't that fantastic? So thank you for that, Danny. I love this, and I will be enjoying the honey. It did arrive at the cabin this week, so it is here safe and sound, and thank you so much for thinking of me. Now, the other listener that I need to give a shout out to is Tom Santee, who sent me an email and somehow it got buried in my inbox. And Tom, I have to apologize for that because I just noticed it tonight when I was sitting down to record this episode. And so I want to definitely give you a shout out on the show. But I also want to tell you part of the reason why I think I didn't see your note. And that is because I have a senior. I have a basketball playing, almost 7-foot tall senior son who is graduating this year. And he is getting a ton of attention, and lots of colleges are reaching out to him, which means that lots of colleges are reaching out to me. And I'm getting flooded with emails from these admissions from universities from all over. I can't even begin to tell you how much this is cluttering up my inbox. And so there's really no way to get through this barrage of university and college emails other than to just get through this year. So Tom, I sincerely apologize for not acknowledging that you sent this earlier, but I want to read what you wrote because I really appreciate it. Tom sent this to me in the middle of September after I had resumed the show after my summer break. And he wrote me this. It's actually kind of poetic, so I wanted to share it with you guys as well. He wrote, "Like the gloriosa lily in my garden after a winter's lapse, when surprising tendrils climb the elm, promising otherworldly flowers, The Daily Gardener has returned. I listen while working in my garden, connecting to people in far flung places and distant ages. Thank you for all your efforts. Well, Tom, thank you for reaching out. It's so validating to hear from listeners like yourself that really enjoy the show. So I appreciate that. I really do appreciate you reaching out to me. Now, if you would like to get a hold of me, all you need to do is email me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. And I'll try to do a better job of getting through these emails. You can maybe even put in the subject line, "Hey, Daily Gardener, look here." That'll probably do the trick. All right, it's time for today's curated news. Okay, today's curated news comes to us from CNN. This is a post that was written by Megan Marples, and the title says, "Why it took nearly 50 years for scientists to name this mysterious tropical plant." Now, this is a rather peculiar looking plant. It was found inside a national park in Peru, and this plant has bright orange fruit that looks like paper lanterns. Now, when botanists saw this, they thought it could go in any number of families. They weren't sure. The plant was discovered by a botanist named Robin Foster, who said that he generally could tell where a plant belonged, what family it belonged in, just by looking at it. But in this case, he was really stumped. And apparently, that is the linchpin, kind of knowing what family it belongs in, because that dictates which specialist that the specimen gets sent to. So that was a barrier. That was a problem. The other problem was that this particular specimen that they had was dried, and they couldn't get enough DNA out of this specimen to be able to help them determine where it belonged to. And so in 2015, a female botanist at the park collected fresh samples, and that helped them determine what family this plant belonged in. I'm going to attempt to say the name of this family, but I might get it wrong, so please excuse me if I don't say this correctly. This is a tropical family of plants called the Picramiaceae family. Picramiaceae. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? Now, here's what I thought was fascinating about this article. There were actually a couple of other things. One was just how long it takes for a plant to get classified. This botanist at the Royal Botanic Gardens in London said that it typically takes 5 to 15 years for a plant to be classified, which I found to be just absolutely extraordinary. And it reminded me a little bit about what we've learned about vaccines in the last couple of years and just how long it takes for them to get approved. That entire process can be so long. And then, of course, it got accelerated because of COVID, thank goodness. But the same is true, apparently, for plant classification. It takes so very long. And then I paid particular attention to what this botanist said from the Royal Botanic Gardens in London. He said, "Until a plant is classified, it doesn't exist, at least not scientifically." Oh, that was a dagger to read that. I just was floored. Now, hopefully with DNA, we'll be able to accelerate the time frame. So that's one thing that I thought was particularly interesting about this article. The other thing has to do with this particular family of plants. And this is where it gets very exciting. This botanist said, now that we know that it's in this family, we can look for secondary compounds of potential use as anti-cancer drugs, which is a feature of this family of plants. So fascinating. Anyway, if you want to read this particular article for yourself, you can search for the number 50 in the Facebook group for the show, and then this article will pop right up and you can read all about it for yourself. Of course, if you're not in the Facebook group, you have a standing invitation. You can join at any time. It's completely free. There's no spam. It's just a group for gardeners, for listeners of the show, and it's a way for me to share some of the things that I stumble on as I'm researching botanists and stories for each episode. So if you'd like to join the group, the next time you're in Facebook, just head on up to the search bar where you'd search for an old friend and type in the words Daily Gardener Community, and then answer a few questions about the podcast to prove you're not a robot or a scammer or a non-gardener, and then I'll admit you into the group. It's just that easy. All right, it's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, October 8th. Today is the birthday of John Hay. He was an American politician, diplomat, and poet, and he was born on this day in 1838. John served 3 assassinated American leaders, including President Lincoln. Along with John Nicolay, he wrote a 10-volume biography of Abraham Lincoln that helped shape his legacy. Like Lincoln, John lost a son, and the loss profoundly affected him. 3 years later, he wrote, "The death of our boy made my wife and me old at once, and for the rest of our lives." After the death of his father-in-law, John became enormously wealthy, and he eventually took over the family business along with all the investments. His family enjoyed regular trips to Europe, a grand mansion in Washington, D.C., and a cottage in New Hampshire that John called the Fells. John had cobbled together 1,000 acres of land after quietly buying up abandoned farms when they became available. Now, the etymology of the name of the place, the Fells, was Scottish, and it means rocky upland pastures. John especially enjoyed time at the Fells, which overlooked a very pastoral view. In the foreground, sheep grazed among prehistoric boulders that dotted the landscape, and in the distance were views of scenic Lake Sunapee. John's wife, Clara, was a gardener, and she had a special love for roses and hydrangeas. In 1890, John wrote about the Fells. He noted, "I was greatly pleased with the air, the water, the scenery. I have nowhere found a more beautiful spot." In terms of poetry, John was best known for a collection of post-Civil War poems that were compiled into a book called Pike County Ballads. It was published in 1871. Here's one of his poems called Words, in which he uses nature to show the simple power that a word can have on our lives. Here's Words by John Hayes. When violets were springing and sunshine filled the day, and happy birds were singing the praises of the May, a word came to me, blighting the beauty of the scene, and in my heart was winter, though all the trees were green. Now down the blast go sailing, the dead leaves brown and sere, forests are bewailing the dying of the year. A word comes to me, lighting with rapture all the air, and in my heart is summer, though all the trees are bare. So true, the power of a single word on our hearts. And today is also the birthday of J. Carter Brown, the American art expert, intellectual, and visionary. He was born on this day, October 8th, in 1934. Jay was the director of the U.S. National Gallery of Art from 1969 to 1992. And although he was born into a family of great wealth, He was part of the Browns of Newport and the Browns of Brown University. Jay was a champion of public access to art. He believed that all people needed to see art in person, and he used a garden analogy to drive that point home. He once wrote, "No one will understand a Japanese garden until you've walked through one and you hear the crunch underfoot and you smell it and you experience it over time." Now, there's no photograph or any movie that can give you that experience. So true. And today is also the birthday of Faith Ringgold. She's an American painter, writer, mixed media sculptor, and performance artist. And she was born on this day, October 8th, in 1930. Faith was born in Harlem to a family that embraced artistic creativity. She grew up after the Harlem Renaissance, and her neighborhood was home to the likes of Duke Ellington and Langston Hughes. One of her childhood friends was the jazz musician Sonny Rollins. Growing up, Faith had chronic asthma, so she learned to pass the time indoors, creating visual art with help from her mom. She became an expert seamstress and began experimenting with fabric as a medium for her art. Today, Faith is known for her narrative quilt, and one of her most beloved quilts is called Sunflower's Quilting Bee at Arles, which depicts a group of African American women working on a sunflower quilt with Van Gogh bringing them a vase of sunflowers. In 1999, Faith had a garden installed at her Englewood, New Jersey home. She says, "I love to be able to look at the garden the first thing every morning, and I love to paint the green in as many ways as I can." For many years now, Faith has hosted a garden party in June to benefit the Anyone Can Fly Foundation. Great name. The mission of Anyone Can Fly is to expand the art establishment's canon to include artists of the African diaspora and to introduce the great masters of African American art and their art traditions to both children and adult audiences. And incidentally, back in 2019, there was an exhibition of Faith's art at the Serpentine Gallery in Hyde Park, Kensington Gardens. It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from the historical fiction writer Deanna Rayburn. This is from her book, Silent in the Sanctuary. Something had shifted between us, faintly, but the change was almost palpable. Our friendship had sat lightly between us, an ephemeral thing, without weight or gravity. Once in the Boboli Gardens, under the shadow of a cypress tree, on an achingly beautiful October afternoon, he had kissed me, a solemnly sweet and respectful kiss. But weeks had passed, and we had not spoken of it. I had attributed it to the sunlight, shimmering gold like Danae's shower, and had pressed it into the scrapbook of memory, to be taken out and admired now and then, but not to be dwelled upon too seriously. Perhaps I'd been mistaken. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Epitaph for a Peach by David M. Matsumoto. This book came out in 1996, and the subtitle is 4 Seasons on My Family Farm. This memoir is a personal favorite of mine. Moss's lyrical writing is a pleasure to read. Here are a few of my favorite gems from this book. Moss wrote, "A new planting is like having another child, requiring patience and sacrifice and a resounding optimism for the future." He also wrote, "I try to rely less and less on controlling nature. Instead, I'm learning to live with its chaos." And then he wrote this one of my favorites: "Good neighbors are worth more than an extra 16 trees." Very true. Well, Moss is an organic peach farmer who tells his story with humor, grace, and incredible insight. His insights on the natural world. The New York Times said Masumoto is a poet of farming and peaches. And I agree. This book is 256 pages of thoughts on growing from a peach farmer with the soul of a poet. You can get a copy of Epitaph for a Peach by David M. Masumoto and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $2. That's a steal. And I think it's because it's been around for so long, but we're lucky there were a lot of them in print. So I also think this will make my suggested Christmas list of used books that will make a really good gift for the gardener in your life. And that can even be yourself. So there you go. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, October 8th in 1915, that William E. Vaughan was born. He went by Bill, but he also wrote using a pen name, Burton Hillis. Bill was an American columnist and an author. In addition to his magazine features, Bill wrote a syndicated column for the Kansas City Star for over 3 decades. And today he's most remembered for his little folksy sayings. And I thought I'd share a few of them with you today. Here are a few garden-related nuggets. The first one goes like this: "Suburbia is where the developer bulldozes out the trees and then names the streets after them." And then here's this one: "Experience teaches that love of flowers and vegetables is not enough to make a man a good gardener. He must also hate weeds." And then I wanted to include this one as well because you might run across it as we get closer to the holidays. Bill wrote, "The best of all gifts around any Christmas tree, the presence of a happy family all wrapped up in each other." Well, now, as you can tell, Bill was beloved for both his humor and his friendliness. He generally wrote 13 paragraphs of humorous observations every single day just to produce his column. He was also an artist, a fact that many people have forgotten. But a 1970 profile of Bill that I ran across in his beloved Kansas City Star shared a story that made me laugh out loud, and I kept thinking about it for days after reading this. So I wanted to share it with you, and hopefully it makes you smile as well. So here's the article. "Bill has always had what art lovers describe as unfortunate yearnings to be an artist. While testing his fledgling wings as a columnist in Springfield, Bill became adept at drawing deep, one-column sketches that relieved him of the responsibility of filling the space with words." Now, here's where it gets funny. It says, "The day Bill filled an entire column with a drawing of a garden hose with very little writing at either end, the editor stepped in and ordered a halt to this sort of thing. Isn't that hilarious? I have got to get a copy of that. That's my mission now, is to find that article where Lord only knows what he said at the top of it, but his column is this drawing of a garden hose. I've got to track it down. So if you run across it, let me know. In any case, I thought it was a great way to end the show for the week. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.